out. That's not saving you, buddy.
Good evening, and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Love Bay family, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Our topic on tonight is Love and Happiness Part-2. So we have with us our co-host, Aaron Mitchell, and our guests, again, thank you very much, are Bob and Linda Wood. Listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv at gmail.com, or you can actually text your questions if you like to 437-778-3299. If you have any resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, any local organizations or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv at gmail.com. With that, Aaron, would you please greet our listeners on tonight?
Hi, everybody from Love Bay Radio around the world, over 180 countries. It's so good to be with you this evening. I am so excited to be with Linda and Bob Wood tonight, just to carry on the conversation from last week and really get to know more, dig deeper into love and happiness and how to create a successful partnership. And that's such an important topic, and it's so valuable that you're sharing your real life experience, because in the stories, I think, lies the wisdom that you can offer to me and to all of our listeners. I got to know Minister Tia, through a training program that I developed for Indigenous women in North America. It's an empowerment and self-defense training program. And I came to be passionate about the issue of violence against women because I myself have lived experience of sexual violence and abuse. And so that was a seed planted in my soul when it happened many decades ago. And I thought I was healed and better. And then it resurfaced when I found out more information about the very high rates of rape, murder, kidnapping, trafficking of Indigenous women in North America due to a multifaceted reasons. So Tia, contacted me to come onto the show to discuss that program. And I think that, talking about love and happiness, and talking about healthy partnerships and healthy marriages is the pinnacle of the solutions to some of those violent issues that both men and women are facing, because it's when the dynamic of men and women are out of balance that power structures can often go off and become part of what causes hate and criminal activity and the things that people with good hearts really don't want to have happen ever to anyone. So I'm just so excited to be here and honored to be in your presence. And I love you, Minister Tia, for inviting me and including me in all this good work that you're leading.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I love you too. And I am looking forward to all the great work that we will do together. I know there are some great things coming forward. Bob and Linda, would you please introduce yourself again?
You first.
Okay. I'm Linda Wood. I'm a master's prepared nurse. I work in the specialty of transplant. And Bob and I have, two wonderful boys who are grown. So we are empty nesters. And they are both married. They have children. So we have seven grandchildren. And, it's a blessing. Bob and I have been married for almost 44 years. And it has been a journey. Bob?
That's a fair statement. Yes, my wife's actually been nominated for sainthood for putting up with me. No two ways about it. But some common ground, Aaron, between you and I with the MMIW issues and Indigenous people. I'm Bob Wood. I was the Title IX coordinator at Gwinnett Mercy University. I am still acting in a consultant capacity. I officially retired June 30th, but I'm hanging around, still completing my work. Like my wife, I have a master's in education, a master's in legal studies, which is enough for me to irritate attorneys, not actually be one. I know enough law to just make them mad. My background coming into this type of work came from a rather dysfunctional family, went into police work, so I saw a lot of things firsthand there and had to deal with, people who were in these situations. And that was that was sort of the Band-Aid to the problem to stop to staunch the problem there. But in that capacity, I, observed and learned quickly that it's like an iceberg. That's only the top part. You're missing everything that's below the surface. From there, went into education because for me, if you're going to eradicate some of these problems, you need to educate. People need to understand these things. And eventually ended up in higher education where 13 years ago, I became a Title IX coordinator. And ironically, my background between police work and the Navy and things of that nature I already had the investigative end of it. I needed to learn learn the other legal aspects of it and go from there. So, and that's how I got involved with MMIW. I was doing some research. I read it and I went, this is atrocious. And that just kind of took off. As Tia knows, we've had some guests speak and I've been fortunate enough to do some work there. And I am so happy and humbled and proud to be here and honored. So thank you very much for having me. And I am looking forward to us moving forward and also coordinating with other groups that, I work with Indigenous people and take our work forward.
And thank you for tolerating us for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, most people
Dear
don't.
Lord.
No, you guys are beautiful. You're great. And you'll be back. I'm quite sure you'll be back. So, listeners, we want to start with sharing some resources, and then we will move right into our topic. First, Pastor Darius Daniels. He is the pastor of Change Church. His website is dariusdaniels.com. Darius is spelled Dharrius. His YouTube channel is Darius Daniels TV. And again, I recommend Pastor Daniels as a resource to those who have already begun to work on their healing processes and are ready to go from a good place to a better place or a great place to even greater. So if you've already begun to identify your issues and go through some work and you're ready to move forward to another place, I highly recommend Pastor Darius Daniels as a resource. We also have J Safe, which is an organization fighting domestic violence, sexual abuse, and physical violence in the Jewish community. Their website is www.ourfamilywizard.com/directory/J JSAFE. And then we have Project Sarah. Sarah, Stop Abusive Relationships at Home, is a program that works to overcome cultural, legal, and religious barriers confronting victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse. They proudly serve statewide the New Jersey Orthodox Jewish community. For the past 18 years, this has been done so. No one is turned away due to race, gender, or financial difficulties. They are funded by the New Jersey Department of Law, Public Safety, U.S. Department of Justice's Office of Violence Against Women, New Jersey Department of Children and Families, Jewish Family Service, Children's Center of Clifton, Passaic, and private donations and foundations. And their website is JFS CLIFTON.org/Project Sarah. And with that, listeners, we move into the second part of our topic, which is love and happiness. And initially, my mind was somewhere else when we were going to begin this topic, but it just so happened that on this week, I found myself having to counsel some individuals in their marriage, and they're young. I had to counsel different individuals in their 20s, and I found myself saying several times, and I'm still forming this question as I'm speaking, but once I get the question out, I'm going to just turn this right over to Linda and Bob. Um, I had to express, and again, this is a situation or have been situations where abuse is not an issue. We're not dealing with abuse because you take a completely different navigation when you're dealing with abuse. Uh, but I had to express clearly that marriage or your spouse is supposed to add to your life, not take away. Um, you don't look to a person to make yourself whole. You don't look to another person to make you happy. But when you enter into a marriage, you should not have less money. You should not have less peace. You should not lose property um, because you connected with this person. When you step into a marriage, you shouldn't be losing anything. You should be gaining. If you find yourself, your peace is taken away, your finances have been taken away, property is now gone, you're in a much worse place, that's a problem. Something's wrong with that. So I think that was a point that I had to make at several different times, several different people, young people, early 20s, married, who are feeling surprised and devastated. But I think that really is a point that I would like to turn over to you guys to expand on and put your thoughts to it, that when you step into a marriage, you should not be less than. You should not have less than. It's like by myself, I'm good. When I connect with you, I should be better. I shouldn't lose what I already have. I'm really hoping that that question is clear or that statement is clear, and before you guys would just go ahead and take that one.
You want me to go first?
You can go first.
I
I'll follow.
can. No problem. From our perspective, it was easy. As I told you, we were theater gypsies. So when we got married, we both had nothing except, scripts from Shakespeare. So we came in with a very low but balanced equation. And it was a question of working together. Plus, we also had an unusual situation where we relocated from where we were in New York, New Jersey, back down to Maryland, and we had a long discussion about it. Due to family issues and my mother's illnesses and things like that, we had to come down there and make that adjustment. But I think, I know in our case, it was always a growing together in things. I mean, when I came back, I was working for a construction company immediately in Maryland that I had worked for all the way through high school and college. And the work was good and I was doing okay, but it wasn't my final stop. I knew that I was going to be moving forward. I think, Lynn, you immediately went to work as an administrative assistant at Hopkins, and I knew it wasn't her final stop. And the irony is now when we talk about balance, I'm a Title IX coordinator, and I've made a good salary. She's a nurse in transplant. She's smarter than I am. She makes more than I do, but I'm smart enough to stay married to her. It's there, and we're at that level where when it's not how much you make, it's what you put in together.
Yeah.
It's what you're putting in together. But going into it, I understand there. If the scales are like that, that can be problematic. Both people have to bring something to that equation. And I think it would be difficult for the individual on the lower end of the scale. It's the only way I can think to put it, to not in some way feel they are on that lower end. You know, that, and that, you know, I'm not saying the person here would do it, but I think it's just natural human instinct. You're there and going, I got to get here. I got to get here because I got to balance this out. And I think that's something that people, before they commit to the marriage, need to have a long conversation about. You know, don't run headlong into it.
You know, marriage is a partnership. Some of the challenges are that the younger demographic, the partnerships are different now. Life experiences for someone who is 20, 21, 22, 25 are very different than life experiences for a person that age 40 years ago. There's a different level of life experiences that occurred years ago that made that 20-year-old more self-sufficient sometimes and more able to handle certain things. In today's society, a lot of things are electronic communication, are virtual, and we lose that ability to actually communicate effectively because you have the protection of the electronic device. So when you go into a marriage in this day and age, it's really even more important to be able to sit down and transparently communicate. And that doesn't mean going out to dinner with and having your cell phone at the table and texting either each other or posting on social media. When both of you are sitting at the table, you actually need to have a conversation. And, you know, again, marriage is a partnership, which means that each person in that partnership has a role to play, and it's their responsibility to uphold their end of the bargain, basically. And you should have shared goals. You know, when you're young and you're newly married, you know, goals a lot of times are, oh, we want to buy a single home, we want to have this career, we want to be able to travel here, we want to be able to do that. And these are all very, you know, reasonable desires. And then you formulate a plan to get to that, to achieve that goal. What sometimes people when they run into problems, a lot of times what you see on the surface, meaning the challenges they're having, are often symptoms, and I'm going to the clinical side now, are often symptoms of the underlying cause. There's always an underlying cause. And in some ways, these people, you know, start the relationship starts breaking down because they've lost sight of the partnership. They've lost sight of the goal. And they've started to go in different directions. And once you start to do that, things can start to spiral, and it spirals you further apart. And then you break down in communication, and then one person gets angry or develops behaviors that actually injure the partnership. So it's most important to be able to talk frankly without fear of having someone judge you. Your partner shouldn't judge you. Your partner should be able to support you as you should support your partner. And you should be able to talk frankly. And, you know, you may have unrealistic goals, and the two of you together should be able to, or hopefully are able to, you know, go through the weeds and come up with, you know, negotiate a common plan for the two of you. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Where do you want to be in 2 years? Where do you want to be in 15, 20? I never thought we'd be married 44 years. I thought for sure I would have killed him much sooner than this. And
yeah, insurance rates, I beat them. I beat the insurance company.
You know, and when I look back, and I think we talked about this briefly last week, and I know I'm on a diatribe here, but bear with me. We you know, the Bob and Linda of 1979, 1980, when we got married, and yeah, I know that was like 100 years ago. When we got married, then we were stupid. Okay, that's all I can say. We were just downright dumb. I didn't know how to cook. He didn't know how to do anything around the house. He was absolutely useless. And it was, it was growing pains, really. But you either want to do it and want to overcome those obstacles as a pair, as a partnership, or you don't. And the couples where they have irreconcilable differences, then that's not a healthy partnership.
The one thing we learned really when we were first married in our first apartment, like putting up curtains and her sending me to the store to buy groceries like a ham.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
But we both came to the conclusion that neither of us should ever say, "Oh, this chore will just be a piece of cake."
Yeah.
Because 3 hours later, you're still working on that piece of cake. I think that was like, it was like,
it was always the kiss of death when Bob said, "Oh, I should be able to do this in 5 minutes," and then I knew we were going to be late to wherever it was we needed to go later.
2 hours later, we're still doing it.
Throwing something out the window because it wasn't working.
Yeah, if I can, I'm gonna digress for a minute. What I was saying about before, when people going into partnerships where things are unequal, because Linda and I, quite frankly, her family was much more stable. I mean, she came from a much more stable environment than I did. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And, I've said this a billion times. At 19, I was a complete train wreck. I went to college to play football, go to parties, and walked into the theater, and I found out, I was fairly good at it. I bounced. I was one of those people that I was bouncing. I would grab at any straw I thought I could get to be successful, to get out of where I had been, instead of figuring out that, okay, pick a course. And I don't know if it was fortunate or not, but I was good at a couple of things at one time. So I was constantly juggling those things. But we worked through it. I mean, again, she knew when to put the brick on my head, and I knew when to say, "Okay, put the brick on my head. I'll sit here and be quiet." It is what it is. So I mean, it's not always necessarily a 50-50, and it doesn't mean things won't work out. But you've got to find your levels with what you come in with to balance that equation.
Yes. So, I mean, I wholeheartely agree with you both. And the two words that I heard clearly are partnership and communication. Mm-hmm. And so it's very well likely and true that two people can enter into a marriage and not be on the same levels, maybe financially or educationally. One person may bring more to the table, but it's still a partnership. And you take what you have and you move forward together. But these are conversations that have to be had before you say I do, not after. You can't say I do and then you spring surprises on each other. And then and coming together, whether you're on equal footing financially or not, if one makes more than the other, the two of you coming together a year later, you still should not have less than what you had. Something's wrong. If you're at the point, months later, a year or so later, you're looking at eviction notices, something is wrong. You need to talk. You should not be in a worse place than you were before you got married. And when I say you should gain, I'm not saying in 6 months or a year you'll be millionaires. What I am saying is two people coming together, you shouldn't be looking at eviction notices, and I mean, and life happens. Sometimes illness happens. Sometimes acts of God happen. So aside from that, we understand, you can lose a job and things like that. But the two of you together going to work every day and now things are just off, something isn't right. And I have said this several times this week, marriage is not a game. And you don't get married and think that I can hold this from him, I can hold this from her. And then after we say I do, I'll tell him everything. After we say I do, I'll tell him about the $55,000 in credit card debt. doesn't work like that. You can't
No.
bring surprises on people like that and then, think that you're just still going to go down that road, love and happiness. No, now you just gave this individual over $50,000 in debt. You just say I do. It's like my debt is your debt, and that's not fair.
People tend to sometimes, we can go into avoidance mode, and that's how people get into debt, and develop other issues. Is they avoid the real problem, and they sweep things under the rug, and over time, that bump under the rug grows to the point where you're tripping over it, and now it's an obstacle.
Yeah.
And so you have to come in with honesty to a relationship, because you have to be able to live with one another. You have to be able to respect one another, and you have to be, again, a partnership. No one should be subordinate to the other. You go in there and you walk side by side. No one walks in front of, they don't walk in front of you, and you shouldn't expect anyone to walk behind you. You should walk into it together. And if you respect each other to the point where you sit on the same level and are truly sharing things, whether one makes more money than the other, or one is prettier than the other, or whatever, none of that should matter, because ultimately it's yours together. And what one brings, one may bring money to the partnership, but the other one may bring fulfillment and joy, and some, and together you may bring laughter and innovation. Everybody brings something to the table, and you can't quantify it, but you have to respect that that in this area you're helping out the family, but in this area these are my strengths, and this is how I contribute.
I think I can give because we went through this, and it was a rough period. An example of what we're discussing, my work. Sometimes, unfortunately, in my work, people don't want you to move forward with something because they're worried about a reputation of an administration, institution, etc. And nobody being named, but I hit a bump like that one time, and I very politely said to the people, please do not paint me into a corner that you are not going to like, because I will go right to the Office of Civil Rights and say you're impeding my job and students are getting hurt, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure she'll shake her head when I say this. When I was on that fence and I knew I had to either do what make that report that I was going to make and move forward, I came home and I discussed it with her. And my first words were, this is going to be painful, because once I make this report, people are going to turn on me. People are going to say X, Y, and Z. And, because I'm saying they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it will not be pretty. So I didn't just jump in and come home and say, oh, by the way, I did this today. And, all Hades, maybe, because I looked at her, I said, they may push me out the door tomorrow. Fortunately, they couldn't legally. I had support and I had backup. But it was tough. And she, she weathered my storm and helped me weather that storm.
I have an ulcer now because of it, but
but again, she was there also on the day that the student involved said to me, thank you, you're the only person that listened to me. Mm-hmm. So, and she and I were on that exact same page. That meant more to us than trying to cover something up for somebody. But again, that was a conversation we had. I couldn't go home and just say to her, hey, by the way, I just put everything in jeopardy because I reported the administration for violating the law. But here we are. I'm still here. She's still here.
But then, what we did was, we looked at, okay, what is the potential downstream impact to us with this? What could happen to us? And we took proaction to protect ourselves so that if there were legal issues, we were protected and wouldn't lose anything. But we had to come to that as a pair, and strategize that and seek advice together to be able to come to that conclusion. Had he just gone off and made these decisions, without involving me, well, the downstream impacts could really hurt me, could hurt my professional reputation, could hurt our financial stability. There's a lot of things. So for him to even consider doing that would have been intrinsically wrong, and would have been misguidance, or being what's the word I'm looking for? Help me, I'm having word finding difficulties.
Would have been inappropriate.
Inappropriate.
No,
but just wouldn't have been honest.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
It would have been me withholding something that could have been detrimental to the partnership. But I will say this: when we hit that decision, we never hit the headbutting of what's right. No, we were both on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
This is wrong. This needs to be fixed. So it was easy for us to move forward from that particular position. And, and I knew what the ramifications were. And one of them was, hey, I'm moving on somewhere else, which
But
that occurs.
We have the same moral compass. Like if we're faced individually with a similar situation that requires you to make a moral judgment, both of us would probably make the same decision. We wouldn't be at opposite ends of the pendulum. We would probably both choose the same course of action. And that's where I think it's important for couples to you have to be on the same page. And that's where communication comes in, and really hearing your partner and understanding what your partner's perspective is. And you have to then, kind of bring that pendulum to center so that you can both, have those similar outlooks and approaches to your life situations. I think that's extremely important. But even though we were raised differently, even though we had different experiences as children, we as adults are on the same page with certain things, morally, sometimes religiously, but morally, and and otherwise, and I think that's very important.
Yeah.
I hug trees.
He hugs trees. Yeah.
I think that is just awesome. And so I want to make a comment, and then Aaron, I'll go to you for your comments on it or your thoughts. But I think what you said about being on the same page morally, being adults and understanding that this is how I think, does it line up with what you think? This is my purpose, does it line up with your purpose? I think it is absolutely essential to have those conversations before you enter into marriage, before you start joining bank accounts, before you start moving in together, before you start having children, before you start lining up, or if you already have children, before you bring this person into your child's life. You need to know, are we on the same page? And Bob, what you said, I think was just, it should be like a catchphrase. Linda helped you weather the storm, and she helped you weather your storm. You can't do that if you're not on the same page. And that is just so important. And you can't take what you believe your morals are, your thoughts, your opinions, and think that you're going to change another person. You can't. Please do not believe that if I say this is what I think or believe or feel religiously, this is what I think, believe, or feel morally, and you don't line up with that. If you're honest and you say, I don't agree with it, or I want to do something different, please don't have in the back of your mind, once you say I do, you're going to make that person change. First of all, that's not fair. That is manipulation. And that's not you truly loving that person, because that's not you accepting that person for who they are. for what they believe. So truly being on the same page, it's about communication, like you said. And if you are really partners, you should be able to communicate. And if you are really partners, you should be able to tell this person, this is what I think, this is what I feel. I do not want to do this, or I do want to do this. And either we come up with a compromise, or we actually understand we need to part ways. Maybe we're better off as friends. Maybe this was just for a season. Maybe we gave something to each other in companionship or in friendship, and now it's time to move on. But you absolutely have to be truthful. And and I just kind of believe, just in listening to the story as you went through that episode, Bob, I just kind of believe like you knew what Linda's response was going to be. Yeah, but you absolutely, you still had to have the conversation, still had to present the information. You could not take her choice and right away to verbalize and express her opinion. But I believe when you have a true partnership, you have an inkling. My partner is going to support me in this, or give me their true and honest feedback, and then I know, should I go left or should I go right? Like, do it together. I think that's amazing, and it's not something that's easily gotten. I believe when you came to Linda in the situation, I believe that's one of the things that helps to build trust. That's how you build trust, when you talk and when you're open, and when you don't just go do whatever you want to do and then you come back and tell me the results of it, which may detrimentally affect me. I think that's another step in how you build trust and how you continue to build your friendship together too, because you should be friends. You should be able to talk. Might not like each other all the time. So.
That's a whole nother show right there. Okay?
Yeah. Only Irishman that couldn't get a potato for 7 years.
All right,
Aaron,
must we bring that up again? Erin?
Yes, for sure. No, I really love that example that you brought, Bob. That verbal communication, leading to Linda, you having the sovereign choice in the matter, right? To, I think that's really the essence of what's missing a lot. People as individuals, when you're coupled, when you're in a partnership, you have that one track mind. Maybe you've been used to doing things on your own. Maybe you've been used to calling the shots, and then you partner up with somebody, and for you to come forward like that on such that it's a really big deal. But you could have easily, said, this is a really big deal. I had to call a shot here. This woman or this person's life is at stake, or these are the stakes. And so, Linda, I'm sorry, but I had to do this. I had to do this for me and for them, and make it about you. And I keep hearing you both say, we're not the most important people in the world, right? Like ourselves. We have to really be thinking about each other. And so what I'm curious about in that scenario was, two things. One, I love how you joined your hearts and minds to start to creatively strategize around what you were facing together. And that's just exciting. That's exciting partnership, because then you, Bob, that you're going to get insights that maybe you weren't thinking about, right? Like in the process, and, Linda's hearing you out. And so I just think that's what makes partnership fun and lasting, because then you're growing that trust with one another as you're working through the issues. But what I wanted to ask you about, Linda, was this an expectation that was already set up before this happened? Or was this something where when Bob came to you and shared this issue, was it something where you were like, wow, I I love this man for coming to me and not doing this to our family without like giving me the space to share my thoughts. Like what was that like for you?
Well, it's funny. I knew we share a lot about like what happens at work. So I knew early on like that there were some challenges that were now escalating and then escalating. So I was in on the journey from the early, the inception of the issue. And that helped me because I was kind of living it with him. I was on the outside of it, but I was kind of living it with him. So I was extremely thankful that he shared his work challenges with me early on, because it didn't slap me in the face when it escalated to the point where action needed to be taken. And it allowed us to prepare for what the potential outcomes could be, and, I think that's what helped us a lot, is that we looked at every action we could possibly take as a couple, or the decisions that he could make, and what the downstream outcome could be to us. What will that mean if you do A, if you do plan A? Okay, now here's plan B. What will the outcome be for us if we go plan B? And we had plan A, we had plan B, we had plan C, and which was move back in with our parents and hope for the best, But
plan C was way down.
That was really the last resort. But it was important for me to have him not cloister that information, and drop it like a bomb, but to include me in his journey. And that journey wasn't a pleasant journey for him, but you can't always share the good stuff. You have to share the challenges too. And that allows you to grow together, because you see how one handles challenges and you see where they need support. And then you learn them well enough to be able to support them in certain areas. And so I was extremely thankful and proud of him, because, I may have, if it were me in that situation, I may have been more passive about it or more afraid. And he wasn't. I mean, he was convicted that this was the right thing to do. And I agreed with that. My fear was what the outcomes were going to be. But together, we supported each other, really. And he got through it. And, after a while, you just look back and you say, oh my God, we made it, and then you look forward and you just say, okay, that's a learning, that's a life lesson, and you learn from it and you move on. And it prepared us, because in his line of work, he came across that issue a couple of times in different places where it was a similar, but something very similar occurred
elsewhere.
But it enabled us to know how to react, to know what to do. It kind of, that first experience was the dress rehearsal, and then we fit. Okay, all right, we're dealing with this again. This is like deja vu, but we know what to do. And it wasn't as it was bad going through the second round of it, but we were more convicted to each other in that journey with that. So it's a life is a learning experience, and everything that you encounter, good and bad, is a lesson. And the key is that you learn and you grow from it together and not apart.
And one of the things that I know both she and I, and I don't say this doing this type of thing, I say that, and the positions we're in, people naturally come to us with something that is not right, because we're the fixers. Well, she laughs. I have St. Michael's sigil tattooed on my wrist, and I said, why? St. Michael's a gatekeeper, so am I.
Mhm.
So, and I told her, I said, when you step into that line of work, you have to have that expectation that sooner or later you may have to push back
Mhm.
because it's the right thing to do. Hers is the exact same thing. I mean, I've listened to her discussing hurdles with patients and things of that nature. And quite honestly, I always knew, I knew which side of the fence she was going to land on before we even had the conversation. And I'm proud of her, absolutely. And I've always supported her, and vice versa. Um, like I said, Lynn was there and remembers that day that I came home because I said, everything we had put things in place ahead of time. I mean, there were certain things that, no matter what happens, this is secure. We're going to have a house, we're going to have a car, we're going to have a dog. I may be looking for another job, but we're going to have a house, car, dog. Those things are secure. There's going to be food on the table. It might be hamburger helper for a little while, but we're going to be okay. And I love hamburger helper, by the way, so that wasn't a slight. But she was there the day that particular student walked up to me and said, "Thank you. You are the only one who listened to me." And I looked at her and I said, "There's not a paycheck in the world that's going to make this any better for me." That to me, and she's the same way, And I know how she is with her patients. And again, that wasn't a conversation we had before we got married, but there was an understanding of how we were because, I mean, even in our theater business, which we loved, there were ups and downs, and sometimes people try to take advantage of other people, and we'd stand there and go, "Excuse me, no, that's not right." So again, we were on the same page with that,
Yeah.
and it was easy for us.
So,
But, just to be clear, though,
Mhm.
this is not an easy journey.
Oh, no,
Living
no.
with somebody else is not an easy journey. It's a journey that you choose to do, knowing that there are going to be obstacles, knowing that there's going to be joy, and you can't go into this with a idealistic expectation. Like, this is not Barbie's dream house, and
I'm certainly not Ken.
it's extremely important to go into things with your eyes wide open. And Tia, this goes back to your statement that you need to be transparent and be honest about how you are and what your life has been, so that your partner can come into that relationship on equal playing field.
I know you have a question. I just want to get this one thing in very quickly. The one thing, as we said, we came from diametrically opposed family backgrounds. And I came from an Irish household where if somebody's not hollering at you, "What's the matter? Don't you love me? You're not hollering at me." Whereas, that didn't occur in our household. And I will say this.
Please. I grew up in an Italian Catholic household.
Yeah, but your father looked at you. He didn't scream. In my household, it's like, all right, who's going to get hit with what? But what I learned with her was to, when we hit those scenarios, she curbed my Irish tendency to jump head first into the fire and go, "What is your problem?" That I've learned to back that. I've become much more subtle about it. Like, "Well, would you like to be sued?" As opposed to screaming, "Would you like me to?" So it's, again, it was a learning curve for me, and she was the coach.
Nice. Thank you. That's amazing.
Well, so listening to you guys on this evening and last week, one of the things that stands out to me is being unselfish. And I think, Linda, I think you said on last week, it's not about you. It's not all about you. Once you connect, to your spouse, you're building a life together. You have to want their best interest. Yes, you guys are together, you're planning and you're moving forward together, but you have to have his or her best interest, And so if you have the mindset of being single, me, myself, and I can do what I want when I want. That's not how you think when you get married. It's even when you have a disagreement. being unselfish is, I'm going to let this go, even if I think I'm right. Because it's like at the end of the day, Linda, I believe you mentioned the, the motorcycle last week. It's like, okay, at the end of the day, what are we going to lose if I keep pushing this issue? Well, and it could be anything. It could be something that you think is small or something that's great to your spouse. But what's going to happen if I keep pushing this issue just because I believe I'm right? I want to hear that I'm right. I want to win this argument, and you can feel good in that moment, but what did you just do to your spouse? And what did you just do to your connection? What did you just do to your marriage? So there are times, and Love Bay, again, this is not abuse. We're not talking about abuse at all. There are times when you will bow out. There are times when you will say, all right, I'm going to let it go.
Yeah, I mean, you have to choose. There are certain hills you just don't need to die on.
Yes.
And you also need to think. If you were in the workplace, would you behave this way? Right? When you're in the workplace, you need to be able to communicate effectively. You need to collaborate. You need to be able to have a partnership with your coworkers so that you're working as a team. Marriage is no different. The only thing that is different in a marital relationship and partnership is love is involved, hopefully.
Yes.
You know? But if you wouldn't make these choices in your business relationships, why would you do it in your personal relationships? It doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. If you're going to respect your people at work but not respect your partner at home,
then you need to move.
Then something's not right.
It makes absolutely no sense. You have to be willing to put your partner's best interest in front of your own. And again, we are not talking about sacrificing yourself in an unhealthy way. We are not talking about that. We are talking about wanting the best for your spouse in a healthy situation where this is what she truly wants. This is what he truly wants. This is what my spouse desires. So I'm going to help them mentally, emotionally, physically. I'm going to help them spiritually. Whatever it is that I can do, I'm going to put my spouse before me because I love this person. And in turn, your spouse should be doing the same. It should be you looking out for each other, and it shouldn't be grudgingly. It shouldn't be, I'm doing this, I just got to put my head in the sand and plow through it. That's not what marriage is. It's hard work because this is what I need to do, but I want to do it. I want to see the best for you. I want you to be okay. So I'm going to do my part. And that is what two people should be given to each other and should be doing for each other. And it shouldn't be like pulling tooth and nails, trying to get it done. It shouldn't be like that. I want to say marriage is nothing like what is shown on television. So please stop watching.
No.
Oh my goodness.
Stay off the Hallmark Network.
It's not. Your husband is not
movies.
going to be talking to you all day long, sending you flowers and checking on you every 5 minutes. He has to work. He has to work. That's not gonna. And guys, you are not going to have sex all day long. At some point, stuff needs to get done. Stop watching reality TV. All right. You are not going to fly to Paris every weekend. You can't just drop the kids off wherever and go do whatever you want. That's not life.
No.
And that brings me to this point. I truly believe, and I would ask you guys to expound on it, that real happiness, true happiness does come after dealing with difficult times together. And I believe that you're able to deal with difficult times together because you've had happiness. It's like, you may have a tough moment. You may be going through a tough situation, a tough conversation, but you should be able to remember the good. You should be able to remember and pull on, all right, I know him. I know his character. we're having a moment right now, but you don't take and base your entire marriage on one moment and you just completely throw it out the door.
You can't. Even in the hard times, you laugh. There's something there that you're going to find to laugh about. It's like, you know what? My day went X, Y, and Z, da, 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 but you know, that goofball over there, I just could not believe, and I knew it was going to happen, and you laugh about it, and it gets you through. It gets you through because, you know, and at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
You know, and it's God knows, you know, she and I both are one of our favorite T-shirts is "You should hear what the voices in my head are saying about you." That's our sense of humor. You know, it's like, so, you know, we just sit there and smile at people and go, and then we look at each other and go, "Oh boy." But you laugh through those things.
I mean, you everything, life is balance, right?
Yeah,
you're going to have
absolutely.
good, you're going to have bad, you're going to have funny, you're going to have sad. The key is to find joy and find connectivity with your partner, regardless of whether it's happiness, sadness, challenges, you know, and success.
When and I think life is a lot like this. I coached soccer and lacrosse for a long time, and one of the first groups of when I was working in inner city Baltimore, we started a program for the kids there. I was teaching students who had been removed from every school in the city. It was a tough group of students, but we started a soccer program to try to give them something after school to keep them occupied. And as I used to tell my assistant coach, who was a much better player than I was, he like a Division I guy, we suffered little victories, like we got the ball past midfield. Hey, celebrate that little victory. Celebrate it. And I think marriages are like that.
Mm-hmm.
You celebrate little victories.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's a little thing, but it's what you build on. You build on it to get to the next thing. And yes, she remembers that time when I used to come home and just my head would hit the dining room table going, I actually had to tell my forward not to stand in the goal, or my center back, don't stand in the goal because that's where they want to put the ball. Please get back on the field. But she weathered that storm. So,
yeah.
But no, I use that analogy because I think like marriage, like life in general is like that. Celebrate your little victories and build on it and keep moving forward.
I think that's awesome.
And always remember too, we're only on this planet for a finite period of time, and nobody knows when their expiration date comes due, right? Mm-hmm. So you really have to make the best of what you have every day. And if you're having a bad day, you have to make the best of it, and you have to enjoy this time with your partner, learn things about each other, because you don't know if you're going to have tomorrow.
I got relabeled.
I'm sorry?
I got relabeled. I got a new expiration date.
Yeah.
I'm not going. I'm staying just to aggravate people.
Bob, if anybody could do it, I truly believe you.
Yeah.
He's
Sounds like
going to be
it.
150 years old. I'm telling you now. He's going to be that one person that makes it to 150.
So much to do.
So much to do.
So, Erin, you want to give us a final comment for Bob and Linda, or final question for tonight?
Yeah, I was curious if you have any thoughts on the mixture of like, what is it part magic, part luck, part destiny, part God, part everything you've been talking about is like the real hard work in these last 2 visits, on the show. And like you're in it, you're committed, you're communicating, you are sharing the load, sharing the joy. I was wondering about these other aspects and how they've impacted your marriage. Like, like I said, do you call it luck? God, destiny, the magic, all of that. So just wanted to hear what you had to say about that.
Probably all of the above. All of the above, honestly. But the one definite common denominator with all of the above is it's hard work. It's hard work. You have to commit to wanting to do that work.
Mhm.
You have to commit to wanting to do that. I mean, again, I know there are, I know there were certain little things I could do that would drive her up the, and I've amended those. And I mean, it's like me, Tia, you and I have talked. I'm a gym nut. First thing I do in the morning, I get up, have my coffee, walk the dog. My basement is my gym. I've literally turned the basement into a gym. She tolerates me with that, and she knows that about me. And that's, I mean, it's like, I joke about her driving home in the car, but when she's screaming at the truck driver and, I'm laughing on the other end going, that's my girl. There she goes. Go get them. So no, but again, it's hard work because again, as we've all said, not every day is going to be magic.
Mhm.
And the other one too is I think it's okay to walk away, to cool off, to get the space to walk away, but you got to turn around and come back. You got to turn around and come back and say, okay, let's do this again. Because if you just walk away and say that's it, well, that's not going to resolve itself, or you're going to keep walking. You've got to want to come back and resolve the issue. Know when you got to walk away for a second. Say, do me a favor, give me that much space. Let me, and then let's go back again.
But to your point, Aaron, I think we're together this long, other than the fact that no one else would probably have us. But I think we're together this long because I think it was intended for us to be together in many ways. We happened on each other when we first met. We dated for a while, we broke up for a while, we happened on each other again. And 44 years later, here we are. And that is, you have to attribute that not to your own success or his own success, but you have to attribute it to, in my opinion, that the stars aligned, or the divine providence, or all of the above. You have to be realistic and know that some people are just meant to be together, and one way or another things work out because they're just meant to be together, and some people are not. And it's in understanding when it's not right that is equally important for you and healthy for you as it is understanding when it is right. You just need to work through these obstacles.
Yeah. Perfect.
So, Linda, you just brought to mind one more final question. So, I happen to believe that you can be compatible in relationships with different people. I really do. I think, you can be compatible with several different people. But I honestly believe that there is just something about a true connection that you don't have with just everybody, that you don't have with just anyone. I think that is something very special. And I don't believe that that's something you can just go out and look for. I don't think you can just pinpoint it. You just find it. So as to your point, you were just meant to be together. You came together. So I guess my question is, on behalf of those of us who are single, some of us have in their mind, I got to go out and I have to find him. I have to find her. And they're doing everything in their power to find the one. And to me personally, I don't think that there's much that you have to do other than taking care of yourself and you being in a healthy place. So can you talk about that, finding that true connection? How I truly believe it either comes or it doesn't. Can you just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, briefly, I've seen the most successful relationships happen by accident. I mean, when I met Bob, I met him at a New Year's Eve party, and I was there with my boyfriend, and
Bob's
and it
told
wasn't Bob. And I was introduced to him from somebody I went to high school with, and there wasn't like an immediate connection. My parents, my father was in the seminary. He was in his last year to be a priest, and was in the last 6 months before being ordained. He went home, and they give you like a period of time to go home and make sure you know what you want to do. And he met my mother, and they were both older. My mother was 32 when they met. And in that time period, she was old, compared to, when we were getting married at 17, 18. And they met, and they had a marriage of 60 some odd years until, my dad passed away. So I feel like you can't look for it, because if you keep looking for it, you're gonna miss what's right in front of you. And sometimes the answer is just, it's there, and it'll find you.
Mhm.
And you just have to trust that. Stop swiping right. I mean, it doesn't work. Sometimes it works, but it's, don't look for it. It'll find you, and you'll trip over it. And then you'll look back 40 years later and say, oh yeah, I get it now.
I mean, and I think she's absolutely correct, because again, whereas her parents were married for 63 years, my poor mom just had bad luck with men. She did. She had bad luck with men. My father, alcohol and drugs, and gone, and the next two behind, same issues. So I did not come from any background where you stuck it through the game. I mean, I don't know how that I made for, thank God she didn't kill me. But everybody would have looked at me and said, least likely to get married or least likely to stay married. And here we are.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Well, you guys are great. This is like a Hallmark Channel moment. You guys.
Lucy and Ricky.
Stop it with Lucy and Ricky. They ended up divorced. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Well, with Linda, when I trip over my connection, you guys would be the first to know.
There you go.
All right, I'll tell you first, and then Love Bay will know.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us here. It was
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you, Linda. Amazing.
You guys
Bye,
are
Mr.
awesome.
Tia.
So, Love Bay, if you want to catch up on previous episodes from the program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DB. We thank you for joining Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Love Bay, please remember, we're rising out of the ashes together. Good evening.